Well, it's great. I mean, just take it as a good sign that there are so many engaged conversations happening all around the room. But we will get back to our agenda, and it is my pleasure, c'est mon plaisir, pour accueillir the Minister of Local Government and Local Governance Reform, who joins us via video. So the next hour is going to all be about municipal reform. So Minister Allain will join us via video to give some remarks. Then the Deputy Minister of the Department of Environment and Local Government, Ryan Donaghy, who's in the room with us, will give a presentation with some slides. And then we'll open it up for Q&A with Ryan. So I'm sure we'll have questions from the room about the process and maybe some comments for Ryan and the minister as well. But we'll welcome them and thank them both for coming and thank them for taking on this reform. You know, we're in the middle of this and we're optimistic about where it can go. It is something we've been asking for a very long time, and many governments would not take it on. So to their credit and to your credit, Mr. Minister, for taking on this whale that's been long overdue. And with that, I will once again thank you for joining us and turn over the floor to you. So please give a warm welcome for Minister Daniel Allain.
Good day, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Sorry I can't be there today. Again, as you know, there's a little hurricane here in New Brunswick. Je vais aller faire après cette conférence, je prends la route, puis je vais aller visiter nos communautés, puis savoir ce qu'on peut certainement aider, puis faire sûr que that people have the right tools and the right equipment to help. So it's been a pleasure for me to be here this morning, and I met on Thursday with some mayors, and as always, it's important to be part of these pertinent discussions and get the feedback. We are celebrating our first annual New Brunswick Municipal Week this week. And it's been fun. It's been good. I think it's a good event. And although we have another day to go, let's keep the spirits up and let's make sure that we keep our spirits up for the next year. As the Mayor Lorden has indicated, we are smack dead in the middle of a reform. We've been at it for 2 years and we still have probably another year and a half, 2 years to go. So, je sais que nous rencontrons régulièrement pendant l'année, mais lorsque viennent les rencontres annuelles en automne, je réalise à quel point nous avons accompli beaucoup de choses ensemble au cours des 12 derniers mois. I know reform has been challenging, but groups like yours and many others have been calling for this reform for 25 years. Je crois que nous sommes tous d'accord pour dire que nous devions absolument moderniser notre système de gouvernance locale afin d'aborder les enjeux auxquels nous faisons face. I want to thank the Cities Association, l'Association francophone des municipalités de Nouveau-Brunswick, the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick, and the Association of Municipal Administrators of New Brunswick. They advocate effectively on behalf of their members, and to ensure that municipal priorities are addressed. I want to thank the transition committees and all the volunteers, the elected officials that have met our deadlines. We haven't missed one deadline yet. And we are working on our next deadline for next week, probably 1st of October-ish or the 4th, on unconditional grants, la péréquation et les financements de base. Thanks to everyone. Special elections will be held on November 28th where necessary. This is a historical moment. I want to encourage everyone to vote or submit their names to become a candidate. The newly restructured local governments and rural districts will officially take effect on January 1st, 2023, marking the beginning of a new era in our province. It will be an era that will allow for more democracy and representation. L'enthousiasme démontré envers le travail important des gouvernements locaux et de leurs employés, des représentants élus et ou nommés, des associations qui les représentent a été très encourageant. With your continued leadership, input, involvement, we will make our province a shining example of what can be done to make ourselves resilient, competitive, vibrant, and the best place to live in Canada. I just actually did an overview of our local governance reform process with the other municipal affairs or local governance ministers across our province 2 weeks, across our country 2 weeks ago. It was really very well discussed, and it was a presentation almost 2 hours. And I can tell you that we are on the forefront on making sure that our local governance process, our local governance institution, is in a great way. So at this time, I'd like to introduce, I think, Ryan Donaghy, our Deputy Minister of Local Governance, Local Governance Reform, has a presentation. I'd also like to thank and shout out to our Assistant Deputy Minister, Jennifer Wilkins, who is with you guys today. So on that note, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I too would like to thank Jennifer for not only being here this morning, but for everything she's doing to lead the local governance team through this process. I have a short presentation that I'll give, and then we'll open it up to questions. So certainly there are a number of moving parts, and what we wanted to do this morning was to make sure that it's clear what is happening under each of the pillars thus far. So the 4 pillars, of course, structure, everybody's more or less familiar with that one. It's the one that probably spills the most ink thus far. Enhancing regional collaboration, land use planning, and our financial system. Alors, pour ce qui est de la restructuration locale, évidemment, le 1er janvier, on va à 89 entités des 340 qu'on a aujourd'hui. 77 gouvernements locaux et 12 districts ruraux. Pour ce qui est, le ministre a mentionné, on avait des échéanciers assez serrés, mais à chaque fois, on a pu s'y rendre. Le 30 août 2022, les règlements ont venu en place pour créer les nouvelles entités. L'élaboration du budget, alors les budgets en ébauche commencent en ce moment et on attend certainement les informations le 4 octobre que le ministre a fait référence, la péréquation et les assiettes fiscales. Les municipalités ont leur DG dans presque tous les cas, sauf un ou deux, et on achève pour ceux-là aussi. Et on se prépare évidemment pour quelques-uns d'entre vous pour une élection le 28 novembre de cette année. We are also working with the associations on orientation. We normally do a cookie cutter orientation that probably more or less meets the needs, but there's going to be a lot of turnover, a lot of new faces, especially with counselors coming from the LSDs where they've never sat around the table. So we are planning to target a lot of the session on essentially board governance, so council governance as a first step, and other things that there's a committee form. So that's the one that I want to make sure we see. I think it's going to be really important, but they're meeting next week, I think, to start drafting what that training will look like. For the second pillar, regional collaboration, the CEOs are in place. We have the final offer out to the 12th and final CEO. So there is one vacant spot on our list on our website. The cost sharing formulas and the voting procedures have been made public. The regional facilities infrastructure conversations are happening at the regional level. Some areas very successfully. A few of you don't have regional facilities, but have adopted sub-regional cost sharing across the region. Fantastic initiatives that we'll certainly be promoting going forward. The regional strategies, what goes into those regional strategies, we need to bring forward a regulation for minimums to go in there this fall. And we'll be working with the associations to ensure we get it right, essentially. And the weighted voting formulas have been made public as well. On land use planning, the big ticket item that we're working on are statements of public interest. They've been enabled for 40 years and we have none. So government has committed to having those in place January 1st, 2023. We're working toward that date right now. There are a number of really important statements that could find their way into that regulation that we've been consulting on. Alors, les cinq sujets pour les déclarations d'intérêt sont les modes de peuplement, changement climatique, les zones inondables. Ça semble encore plus important ce matin quand on voit les photos de la côte est du Nouveau-Brunswick. Le ministre a fait allusion à ça tantôt. On a l'agriculture et les ressources naturelles. On a aussi le zonage inclusif, un règlement qui vous donnera cet outil-là. Et on a fait un changement dans la loi l'année passée. Les installations provinciales, alors les écoles ou toute autre installation provinciale, doivent maintenant prendre compte de votre plan local. Et si la province ne peut pas suivre le plan, ils doivent maintenant avoir une décision du cabinet qui est rendue publique pour annoncer publiquement qu'ils vont faire quelque chose de différent. Ça rend la tâche un peu plus transparente. Auparavant, on avait la province avait simplement besoin de mettre l'installation où il voulait. Puis on peut tout pointer à des différents exemples où peut-être que ça a été placé dans un endroit qui éventuellement nécessite des infrastructures pour vous. Ça commence à changer vos plans locaux et ainsi de suite. Alors, c'était très important sur celle-là. The last pillar being finances. So we approached it in 2 phases, but as I'm going to mention, we have been taking steps in that second phase already. So given the flexibility to go to as high as 1.7, but as low as 1.4 on business. So today, on business, it's multiplied by 1.5 times your local rate, period. As of January 1st and in your budget process right now, you can go as high as 1.7. And I hear and had some conversations about the fact that you didn't want to tax business more. Well, you need to remember that the province is stepping out of some of that tax room. So 5% last year, 5% this year. If you go to 1.7, your local rate, it will near match what we've stepped out of as a province on the provincial property tax rate. Local governments will have that are coming together are going to have different property tax rates reflecting the different levels of service. As I mentioned, we have stepped out of we will have over 3 years, 50% on apartment buildings and cottages and 15% on business. And they are different classes. So if you can't tax apartments more unless you raise your local rate. So your increasing multiplier is just on business. So in phase 2, we want to look at additional classifications. We've done the first one, heavy industrial. You can now do that 1.4 to 1.7 just on that property tax class. You can do it on all business, but you can do it just on industrial. And we're going to be looking, and the minister commits all the time that we are looking at additional tax classes, and it certainly was a topic of conversation that we've had this week. Alors, pour ce qui est des entités non restructurées, c'est pas vraiment non restructuré, c'est juste vous n'allez pas en élection. On travaille avec une tierce partie qui agit comme le facilitateur. Alors, vous êtes tous au courant pour ceux qui sont visés, de qui c'est. Puis, on va vous épauler jusqu'au 1er janvier sur ça. Policing service, there's been a couple questions, so wanted to make it really clear, is we're in negotiations with the federal government. The federal government dictates that we have to give a year's notice for any changes. We don't know what flexibility they're going to give us. And if they give us the flexibility we're looking for, January 1st, 2024 would be the earliest date we can do any switchovers for the policing model. So we're going to continue that work. There's communication coming out to you in the coming weeks on this, and additional details that we're awaiting from the feds. Alors, qu'est-ce que nos priorités pour cet automne? Puis je dirais qu'il y a une couple de choses qui manquent ici, mais les budgets, évidemment, très important pour le 15 novembre. Les évaluations et la péréquation s'en vient, comme le ministre l'a mentionné. La semaine des municipalités, vous pouvez voir que la présentation a été utilisée une couple de fois. On parlait de ceci la semaine passée puis la semaine d'avant. Il faudra changer les diapos pour la semaine prochaine. Les élections spéciales. On a des changements législatifs qui s'en viennent le 4 octobre, mais on a aussi quelques petits changements qu'on va faire cet automne. Une des choses, c'est de prolonger le temps nécessaire pour changer les plans d'aménagement. Alors, aujourd'hui, sur une annexation, vous avez 18 mois. On va prolonger ça. Toute autre restructuration en 5 ans. Alors, on va faire le miroir de ça. Ce n'est pas que vous ne pouvez pas le faire dans 18 mois si vous voulez. C'est juste qu'on a entendu que plusieurs instances avaient besoin de plus de flexibilité que ça. So, on the RC side, quickly, there are mandated services under economic development, tourism promotion, community development, cost sharing on recreational infrastructure, a public safety committee, and for the 3 RSCs in Southeast, Fundy, and the Capital Region, the additional social focus for 2024. So I've heard not so much out of this room, but a lot of comments about, well, it's simply going to create duplication. Well, there's a provincial role, a regional role, and a local role to each of these. And some of you are probably dipping into the provincial or the regional role, and there needs to be an alignment there. I'll grant you that. But there's still a local role in economic development, for example. Your industrial parks, your BIAs, those are all local things that aren't going to be managed unless you want to take it on at the regional level. Pour ce qui est du tourisme, c'est vraiment la même chose. Quand on parle d'événements, de spectacles, des choses comme ça, c'est plus local. On veut la promotion de la région au régional. Community development. So as a first step, some regions will go further than this, but as a first step, it's integrating the community inclusion network. There are some funds that come along with that. It doesn't fully fund it, but it's going to give that governance structure. The SINs were working really well in a few regions and not at all, or not very well at all in several others. So this is going to give a coordinated approach to that work. If we get more specific, there's still a provincial role, and that regional role is to provide that regional strategic focus, establishing that committee, bring together regional partners. There's a lot of, and we've talked about this a lot, there are a lot of players in this space. So working together is what we're looking for here. Again, that's where you start. If you want to grow it from there, there are minimums that we're looking for in each of the services. Unless your region is ready to start running before you walk, start walking. And then if you want to go further in future years, that's okay. And I always use the example of the Acadian Peninsula, who took on tourism several years ago. They started with a budget of $150,000. They did some planning. They had a couple staff. They did a little bit of promotion. Today, they're triple that budget because they've proven the concept and they're getting results for what they're investing in. Le transport régional. Alors, ici, on cherche à avoir une vision, une stratégie. Il y a certaines régions qui ont déjà des projets régionaux en transport. C'est fantastique. Il y en a plusieurs régions qui vont commencer à la base l'année prochaine. C'est correct. Vous planifiez, vous identifiez qu'est-ce que les priorités et vous allez de là. Le partage des coûts d'infrastructure. Ici, encore une fois, nous, on a dressé une liste. On a partagé ça avec les CSR, avec les municipalités. Puis c'est avoir une conversation. Plusieurs régions ont pu trouver une solution. Ils ont identifié leurs installations. Ils vont faire leur cost sharing de toutes différentes façons, qui est fantastique. On a toujours dit, si vous pouvez trouver une solution régionale, encore mieux. Autrement, si le ministre a besoin de le forcer, on va le faire, mais ça va être it's going to be at a prescribed cost sharing. So the service delivery models, I just want to remind you, the RC doesn't need to staff up and take this on necessarily. There are lots of third parties that are doing some of these mandates, and I'll show a few of them. And there are some municipalities that are going to be the regional deliverer of the service. And that is exactly what it should be, because some of your cities are that regional hub. You're already doing much of it. Alors, dans le nord-ouest, le tourisme, ça va être, je prends la supposition que ça va être fait. Ils vont utiliser Tourisme Edmundston, qui est pas, ça ne fait pas partie de la municipalité, c'est une tierce partie. Les autres, ils vont le faire à l'intérieur de la CSR. Restigouche, ça va tout être à l'interne. Le nord, pour Chaleur, vous aviez déjà pris ces pas ici pour le faire à l'interne, avant la réforme. Alors, ça a probablement été une conversation facile de savoir comment vous alliez le faire. Dans la péninsule acadienne, c'est la même chose. Il y avait déjà l'Office du tourisme, alors ils vont amener le développement économique aussi dans cette conversation-là. For Greater Miramichi, they're contracting the city of Miramichi to do economic development and tourism. Makes sense. And I don't know how the conversation went around the table, but from the outside looking in, this makes perfect sense for the region. Kent is doing it all internally. The Southeast, there's going to be some element at the RSC as you figure out, as I understand it, what you're going to do with the regional model. So today they have 3+, and what that morphs into in 2023 is going to be interesting to watch. The regional tourism piece at the RSC and the others. Kings are all internal, so Kings is the greater Sussex area. Fundy is using Envision for economic development and tourism and internalizing the others. Southwest is all internal. The capital region is using Ignite on economic development, the city of Fredericton on tourism and internalizing the others. And a surprise to me, a pleasant surprise, the Western Valley is going to use Ignite as well as their economic development provider. So I mentioned the regional strategies. They need to be adopted by July 1st, 2023, and they need to be renewed every 5 years. We know you're going to start with a regional strategy and probably grow it. It needs to be reviewed every 5 years. It doesn't mean it doesn't evolve during those 5 years. We put that in there in case a region creates a strategy because they have to and puts it on the table. It happens on the land use side at least a lot. So going through till January 1st or 2024, obviously a lot of this gets created January 1st, 2023. The adoption of the regional strategies in July 2023, the social focus for 2024, as well as the Independent Municipal Commission that the Minister mentioned in his speech. On utilisait cette diapo à l'interne pour planifier les prochains mois, mais je voulais le montrer parce que tout le monde pense que c'est facile de tourner une loi ou un règlement. Il y a plusieurs étapes et on a beaucoup de choses qui se passent cet automne et au printemps. Alors, certainement la commission municipale, comme on a mentionné, la loi sur le financement communautaire, un autre projet de loi cet automne que j'ai mentionné. plusieurs règlements. Alors, il n'y a pas beaucoup qui se fait laisser à des politiques. On le met en règlement pour que ce soit clair qu'est-ce qui est les mandats et la piste à suivre. Je vais m'arrêter là. J'ai parlé longuement, mais pour plusieurs d'entre vous, c'était du nouveau. Pour certains d'entre vous, je m'excuse parce que vous l'avez entendu 3 fois de suite. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ryan. I guess we would now open the floor to any questions or comments from mayors and councilors. So don't be too shy, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Donaghy, for your presentation. I just wanted to make a bit of a commentary and see if I can get your sort of reaction or feedback, I guess. Understanding that there is a lot of differences between these regions and like the way they're made up. The housing piece is an interesting one, I feel. So when we look at St. John, where I hail from, we have very specific issues with homelessness, poverty, and affordable housing in the urban center, less so in the surrounding areas. My concern is that if we don't have the sort of flexibility to get going on this housing homelessness issue because we need to have a regional approach, is there a chance, I guess, that a phase 1 would focus on the cities, would really look at the urban issues that have to come as a result of this?
So what I can say is your CAO, on behalf of your deputy mayor yesterday, requested that very thing from the premier. It's a conversation I suspect we are going to have. Right now, my mandate is to do it regionally in all 3.
For sure.
Now, what that looks like and who delivers it and how it's delivered can be different in each of the regions, for sure. But what we're looking for is an MOU from the provincial level to the regional level. And if there are any investments to be made regionally, that they be shared, so that it is not just the cities that are bearing that brunt. But I suspect there are additional conversations to be had in the coming weeks.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Ryan. I was
Hello.
wondering if you could expand again on the municipal commission, because that seemed to be news to a lot of us yesterday. So if you could just go over the list of things it's going to be responsible for, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm going to list the things that it might be responsible for, because of course it needs to be created in legislation, and I need to go to cabinet 3 or 4, 5 or 6 times, Minister, before we actually have it in place.
At least.
We're free, I'm getting frequent flyer miles. I think we're there pretty much weekly. I thought I was going to get a week off next week, but not so much. So the APAB, Assessment, Planning and Appeal Board, is the first thing. The Municipal Capital Borrowing Board responsibilities are probably going to end up there. But of more interest to you is the whole question around conflict of interest and your code de déontologie. So that there's an independent third party doing that, because today we've put you in an awkward position a few times, not for this room, but one municipality had to suspend their mayor. That's probably not the easiest thing to do around the council table, right? So we heard you when we brought it in, that we should probably look at this, and government is certainly looking at that very thing. The other piece that I'm most excited about is to keep evolving the local governance structure, is to have community restructuring, have a process through the Independent Municipal Commission. There won't be any plebiscites, and they will recommend direct to cabinet. So those are the components that we're looking at this time. There may be a few other things added. There's certainly some ideas that have come up in recent weeks. But January 1st, 2024 is what we're targeting for that commission.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre, and thanks, Ryan, for being here again this morning. I know we've seen a lot of you during the past days and weeks. One item, and I know it's justice and public safety, but it's an item that we're all discussing in the majority of our communities and across the country, is the police services review. And I know it's Connie Corsi that's going to be reviewing that. Any insight or feedback in terms of the dialogue that's occurring either at the cabinet table politically or things that we need to be aware of? I know in our region, that's an active dialogue in terms of policing services. And a lot of this is tied into the social issues that some of our communities are dealing with. So any comments or feedback or insight that could be shared in terms of next steps, any provincial direction, and anything that we should have on our radar as municipalities. Merci.
Minister?
So yeah, so at the I can say at the caucus level, cabinet level, we have a new minister of public safety. He is engaging with the federal government. As we all know, there is a moratorium on contracts for the RCMP. So the federal government has been, comment dire en français, très avare avec les renseignements ou informations. And to some point, basically the dialogue is non-existent right now. So I know the Minister of Public Safety is working definitely on a plan for policing, because it's out of the 5 top items from the consultations from local governments reform last year and this year, policing was top priority. Hence, now we have a new Minister of Public Safety. And I know that the discussions are, I wouldn't even say ongoing. We're trying to get information from the federal government. So Ryan, maybe you can have a government answer at the same time.
Yeah, so certainly to the minister's point, part of it is what is the willingness of the federal government to give us flexibility in the policing models unless we take it on ourselves, and how would we do that with the current contracts, which run for many more years. So we're having conversations right now because we need to change a few policing models because of restructuring. But that's going to bleed into some of that larger conversation that public safety will have with Public Safety Canada.
Ryan, just a question around the regional strategies, to the points that we've been made. We've been in a lot of meetings the last couple of weeks, and I'm not going to go back over some of the conversations we continue to have, but this one is maybe I'd like for a little more information around what these regional strategies are meant to be. I'm part of the transition committee in the Miramichi region, and so we've talked a bit about it, but maybe you could just help define it. Is it meant to be like an organizational strategic plan? Is it more external facing? And I'm wondering, like, will the department be providing like a template or a scope of work or terms of reference? Because on the ground, like, we're already having these conversations at our RSC, for example. It will likely take 2 meetings for people to agree what we might need to do. That'll take us to March. We'll need to issue an RFP. We'll be into April, awarding the RFP in May. So maybe we'll be starting work on a plan in June that needs to be delivered by July. So yeah, maybe just a little bit of detail around what is that meant to be, and the support or template that'll be provided from the department to make sure that we can get those in place by the timeline. That already seems tight.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And as I mentioned, I think it'll be an evolution. You'll have something on July 1st, and I can't imagine that a year later it's the same thing that you had when you started. You'll grow it. We are going to have a template. Those minimums will be set in regulation, and we've provided $50,000 per RSC to help with the costs of those studies as well.
Maybe quick follow-up, like, will we have the template in hand in January 1? Because I know as we've been working through the restructuring this year, every time I go to a transition committee meeting, they start by saying, well, we were supposed to have this information to do this today, but we don't have it yet. And so, yeah, I guess will we be relatively assured that it'll be there January?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, hi, Ryan. Stephen Hart, City of Fredericton. Ryan, I'm just curious. I know we've talked about this, but for the wider group, some of our conversations are with regards to our concern that some of the regulation or legislation is driving our provincial partners to work exclusively with the regional service commissions and not with the regional service commissions and local governments. And I'm wondering if in your cleanup bill, that could be addressed explicitly to, at minimum, add local governments to the list of agencies you're expecting provincial governments to work with.
So it doesn't need to be put in regulation. There's nothing in regulation that says that departments have to work with the RSC and can't work with municipalities. So what I would ask, and I I meet my DM and ADM colleagues on a monthly basis. It just happens to be next week. I will remind them of that. If you have specific examples, especially after next week, feel free to give me a call. We'll address it. That's not the intent.
I know you answered this question yesterday, but I would like to pose it again, particularly since you said there were some meetings being held on this topic while we were meeting, and that concerns equalization. Since 2018, when we started this whole process as a collective here, we made it very clear that we're, we're supportive, we're doing whatever we can to be supportive of this, but it was very clear that any kind of changes to the equalization grant had to be coupled with comprehensive tax reform. And I know that there are a lot of cities here that are being hit really hard by this. So any further insight? And please don't talk about the 1.7%.
Well, I am going to.
No, so I'll start from my part, and Ron, you can finish. Okay, so on equalization, we've been discussing it at cabinet. We've got some direction to move forward on equalization. As you know, we have equalization, you have core funding, and those are the two. Equalization's been here since probably 1965, when Louis Giroux started le programme de chance égale. So, and the core funding came later, and basically was a pot of money for municipalities that weren't receiving some, because some people didn't receive equalization and they felt bad. So we are reviewing all this. Again, we are still crunching some numbers. We're almost there. Pierre-Marcel Desjardins, Madame Nora Kelly report really enlightened us on certain aspects. So that was really important for us. And I thank both of them for doing that. And Mayor Arnold, you're right. Comprehensive tax reform is coming forward. We are working on comprehensive tax reform. Comprehensive tax reform means different things for different municipalities, for different people. Comprehensive tax reform, the City of St. John indicates comprehensive tax reform is the redesign of the assessment system, having more tax room, creating multiple tax classes, giving flexibility on non-residential rates, the issue of double taxation, and the modification of appeal system. Hence, for myself, for example, modification of the appeal system could be some type of point that we could put in the municipal, creating the new municipal commission. Double taxation, we are working on it. We have a plan. We may even go further. Flexibility on our residential rates, we're working on that right now. Ryan has so eloquently said so many times. The creation of multiple tax classifications, we are working on one. I can assure you that in 2023, we'll have some more. We are creating more tax room. And if there's one thing that came out from the Desjardins-Kelly report, is that New Brunswickers do not have confidence in their assessment system. And we agree that there needs to be more confidence put in. It's been a tough 5 years for Service New Brunswick regarding assessments. We have a class act assessment system. It's compared to some other countries, some other jurisdictions. We just have to work on it, and we agree. That's going to be a longer term. That one's a little bit tougher. That's just not a local governance reform that we can just flick a switch, just like policing reform. So we will be coming out very soon on equalization. Our target was the 1st of October. We may be a couple of days late because of the 30th of September has pushed some. We've recognized that the 30th of September, the province of New Brunswick is recognizing that day now. So it's going to give us we'll have to push some discussions, but we'll have something comprehensive. I think something that everyone in this room, we've listened. I can assure you, that when the city association sent that letter a couple of weeks ago, we have listened, and I'll let Ryan move forward on our government answer.
Thanks, Minister. So you've made an assumption that we were going to implement what you got consulted on in whole. And I think you're going to see that that's not quite the case. As far as comprehensive tax reform, as the minister listed off what it meant to St. John, we have given some tax room, not in the way you want it, but it's there. We are looking at more classes and additional flexibility. So we've heard that the 1.7 may not be enough on it once the added flexibility is there. October 4th is when you're going to find out, because we're going to the legislature with a piece of legislation to change the equalization piece.
Thank you, Minister Allain and Ryan, for your presentation. Paula Rodwan from the City of St. John. You kind of transitioned into my question, actually. So obviously assessments, property assessments is huge for St. John. I'm just kind of wondering if you can reflect upon what kind of changes that you think that would end up being brought from the discussions that you've had, and any idea on a timeline of when those actions would take place.
Minister, did
Well, on comprehensive tax reform, I think out of the 6 points, we have 4 that we've worked in 2022. And there's the 2 other ones that we'll have to start working on 23. Again, the modification of the appeal system and the redesigning the assessment system, which is a cross Service New Brunswick finance issue, interdepartmental. They are continually working on that. The 4 others, again, it's a finance, Service New Brunswick, and local governments. So we've got 4 that we've been working on right now, 4 out of the 6. And there's 2 that it is a major overhaul. So it's the assessment system. It's to the Kelly Desjardins report. It's something we have to tackle, and it's like we are having so much discussions at cabinet on numerous files relating to that I think you'll see some movement this fall or in 23. Ryan?
Yeah, there'll be some announcements of how we're going to go about that in the near future. As I understand it, again, it is Service New Brunswick, but cabinet is having those conversations with Service New Brunswick right now.
Okay, and I just had another question. There was some discussion in the beginning of reforms about permanent residents possibly having the right to vote. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
It's still in the plans to have it in place before 2026.
Okay, thank you.
So Ryan, could you share we had done a legislative and regulation timeline to the public. I think we gave it to the opposition last time. Could you send it to the city associations so
Yep.
everyone here would know our timeline on legislative requirements? I think we still have 4 major bills, which that would be a major bill. And we have 8 regulations besides that we have to bring to the Legislative Assembly.
Yep.
Thank you. Just want to build on something that Mayor Don Arnold mentioned earlier about the equalization grant. Brent Harris, by the way, coming from St. John. I know it's not just specific to us, but a lot of communities have concerns. You're mentioning the assessment system, and we're talking about, the equalization grant redistributions or rejigging has to be also tied to that comprehensive tax reform. But I think the other piece we need to talk about is how our industries are assessed, which lay outside the control of the municipalities. You say it's at the Service New Brunswick level that you're trying to do that work. So what does that work look like? Because from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, certain exemptions and certain tax reductions and assessments were overruled or done or underassessed during refit processes at mills and things like that have been completed, and those assessments haven't been brought back up. So that's something that doesn't lay within our control, and I just haven't heard anything here so far that says that's something that you're going to look at. Is that part of the assessment system rehaul? Is the government going to be kind of taking those exemptions off the table? But, yeah.
So there aren't very many exemptions other than machinery. The only other actually affects the provincial property tax rate that is charged on one industry, not the local. But the assessments, and you're alluding to the reassessments of mills across the province back in, I can't remember, it was 2012-ish.
Yeah, 14.
2013.
Yeah.
So there were multiple years of appeals, and a decision was made to stop those appeals and reassess them at that time. Some of them have been going up quite a bit. Some of them haven't. I do know that a request had been made. I haven't seen the results because it wouldn't come to me, to look at all of those and report it back.
So as far as like resourcing Service New Brunswick to be able to assess these, what's the approach here?
So I haven't heard from Service. Again, they wouldn't come to me, so
Right.
I'll let the
And
minister jump in.
it wouldn't come to me too. So we'll have to make sure that we have the Minister of Service New Brunswick here and invite her and to explain where they're at on that one.
And as it's reviewed, if it becomes clear they're under resourced, that'll be a decision government will need to make. But I'd be making a terrible assumption at this point.
Yeah, I guess it's just concerning that we hear that Service New Brunswick doesn't have what it needs to try to go and tackle that problem. And some of the things that you're alluding to bring in really rely on them solving that problem. So anyway, we'll reach out to the Minister of Service New Brunswick and try for that, but thanks.
Thanks. And I understand they're actually presenting to your council in a week or two.
Good morning, Minister Allain and Ryan. Brent Babcock from the City of Campbellton. Minister, earlier this summer, we had a discussion with you regarding the potential interest or rollout of a communications plan for this. I feel that going back to the polls within a year and a half in my community, there's going to be a lot of confusion as to why that's occurring. So I'm just wondering if there was any further development on possibly implementing or producing some media product that we can use as we go back out into the field and ask for that endorsement at the November 28th election. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And I'll start and Ryan will finish. Sure. Like we usually do. So yeah, this is definitely this summer. As we indicated, we've heard from New Brunswickers that they want more information, that they're thirsting for more information. Puis c'est vraiment important qu'on les donne les renseignements nécessaires. On a ouvert un nouveau site web, le site web qui est le gnb.ca. //
NB Dynamic.
Dynamic NB ou Vibrant NB, c'est ça. So yeah, we have tons of information. Again, Municipalities Week was our kickoff, and I've been trying the best as I can in the media to definitely talk about what we're moving forward on. Ryan will have the specifics on what we're doing.
In the next week or so, anybody who's going to the polls on November 28th is going to get a bright yellow envelope from Elections New Brunswick. So we've partnered with Elections New Brunswick through this to not duplicate, but to make sure that we were running in parallel paths. They too just launched their new website specific to the election, so the municipal election. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. If there are informations there that are missing, certainly open to hearing. The minister launched a video this week. There are others to come, and we'll be producing some materials for the local project areas to utilize if mailouts are something that you want to do or the like. And Elections New Brunswick, so that's the big one, the one that's coming in the next week or so, because it's not specific to the election, it's about the election. And then they do their normal mail-outs with your voter card and all of the other things that they normally do.
Ryan, thank you. Minister Allain, always good to see you. And really, with Municipal Forum, there's a lot of moving parts. And I really appreciate, after the decades, what we've gone through and asked for, we're seeing some results. So I appreciate that. I'm sure everybody in the room appreciates that, trying to find that sweet spot of reform. So it's trying to keep everybody happy is probably going to be almost impossible. But my question today is, and you can well imagine that, especially some of the cities here, probably all the cities and some of our other communities are going to have transitional costs. So my question is the province going to help the municipalities with those transitional costs?
So there is a number of things that we are paying for. So if there are legal costs, if there are additional expertise that's needed, the like, all of that is being covered. Other costs of future service delivery and so on is not.
So, yeah, for example, if we're taking on certain areas of the province that normally have RCMP costs, which will be borne probably by the municipality. So the fact is that we can't hire police officers in 1 week. So the appreciation is you hire, you go through that, but you have to put a lot of training costs in those individuals. So will it be help with stuff like that?
So we'll have that conversation once we know what we're doing on policing. We do have a request from the city, and that's what we said is it's premature until we know when that transition happens and what those costs might be.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Merci tout le monde. Minister.
Thank you. Have a great day.